Everybody ready?
Yep. Let's go.
Ahsoka!
4 Midwest Guys presents Star Wars Rebels HQ.
Battles leave scars. Some you can't see.
Holocron. I'm afraid it's changing him.
I will never let my friends get hurt again.
Your anger gives you strength.
Governor Price, these rebels have proven particularly stubborn. How do you intend to solve this problem?
I need someone who sees a bigger picture.
To defeat an enemy, you must know them, not simply their battle tactics, but their history, philosophy, art.
I must become more powerful.
Split the treasure. Oh,
That's a classic.
One last glorious day in the Grand Army of the Republic.
Jedi and Sith, the light and the dark.
They'll be the architects of their own destruction.
The key to destroying the Sith.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Star Wars Rebels HQ. Tonight we'll be reviewing Episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber. With me today is Mr. Ryan Eckenbauer.
What's up, what's up?
How's it going, B?
It's going good.
And also my brother, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing alright.
Good. We're all three here. This has been a long time since the whole Rebels HQ staff has been in here in one place. Yeah.
It's been a while. Each of us have gone through our peak season at our work.
Yeah, so
Kind of delays everything.
good to have everybody here, and boy, do we need it, because wow, what an episode we just had. And yeah, so let's just dig into it. Right off the bat, we are introduced to new Star Wars mythos, I guess, or lore. We learned that there was a Tar Vizsla who was the first Mandalorian to be, I guess, into the Jedi Order.
Well, they mentioned
Over 1,000 years ago?
Tar Vizsla once or twice before, haven't they?
No, that's the first time.
Really? I could have swore that we actually talked about it when we were talking about like the Vizsla clan, like previously in Rebels.
We talked about Pre-Vizsla, who was the leader of Death Watch in Clone Wars, but we've never actually talked about this. This Tar Vizsla is all brand new.
Oh, okay.
So,
like this wasn't part of like the EU at one point or anything?
no,
Okay.
not that I'm aware of anyway.
Okay.
And according to my research anyway, no. But yeah, so he was the first Mandalorian to be inducted in the Jedi Order. I like how they called it first, so there could have been others that we don't know about yet, but he's the first to come along.
Well, and the fact that his sword more or less becomes a holy relic after he dies does suggest that he's one of few.
That's correct. He is the creator of the Darksaber, which was kept in the Jedi Temple, I guess, after his death, and then the Mandalorian family stole it back, and then kind of used it almost like a, I guess, like a symbol of power.
Like a scepter
of power that gets handed down from generation to generation, and
it's like a totem that gets passed down.
Yeah,
like, and it's showing like you're the high officer sort of thing.
It's like the I guess it'd be like what is it? I want to use Highlander, but it
what, Excalibur?
Scotland. Like the different tribes, and they all had like their family swords and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
The tribal leader sword,
okay,
the chief's sword, or whatever.
I'm not sure if that's the thing, but if it is, that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Goes along that same thing. So yeah, so pretty cool. So we finally get what we probably always wanted is when we were playing with kids is there's a Mando who can use a lightsaber. So there was actually a Mando Jedi at one point. It doesn't get any much cooler than that. I mean,
I mean, it's pretty cool, but you don't know if the Mandalorians have like the same like backpack jets and like all the same like equipment they did at
it's
that
1,000
time.
Years ago, so yeah.
The technology might be a little different.
Yeah, like
or you know,
Fett Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. You finally got a Fett Jedi. No, but yeah,
well, either that or like somehow the technology worked better back then, and just like it all went to hell. It could go either way.
Yeah, but it is kind of cool because I've always wondered there had to have been some Force-sensitive Mandos at some point. I mean, they have all these different alien races that are Jedi.
Yeah. Well, actually, later on in the episode, it actually reintroduces the Jedi Mando War thing.
It does.
Which actually could explain why you don't have a lot of Mandalorians that join the Jedis. If they were viewed as like rivals and like you joining the Jedi Order would have made you a traitor to that clan.
To your people.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that gets brought up later in the episode because that used to be... it's part of the Legends, so they're reintroducing it as canon for the first time since they rebooted the whole
Well, that's something
thing.
good that Rebels has been doing is kind of allowing to Disney to slowly reintroduce things that it pretty much decanonized, more or less.
Exactly. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Mando Jedi Wars as we approach that part in the episode. But yeah, so... a lot of really cool stuff right off the bat in this episode, and it's a very deep episode. A lot of stuff going on. But
well, I also, while we're talking of the sword, like there is a noticeable difference in design than like the traditional Jedi saber with this.
Oh yeah, it's
like and later on you see like it versus like Kanan saber, and it's almost like seeing a katana versus like a Spanish rapier.
Rapier, yeah. Like that. I was going to say that the way it has the curved top to it.
Yeah, it really is a lot different in terms of design, and honestly, the only like dark bladed lightsaber you really see in the universe so far, right?
It does beg the question: was Tarv, even though he was a member of the Jedi Order, did he turn? Was he a Sith? Because
it's interesting though, because all the Sith sabers tend to go red,
right? But it would I just don't see a Jedi using a dark bladed saber. I don't know. It kind of goes against them being on the light side and everything else, symbolically anyway.
Yeah.
So unless there's more to it than we don't know about yet, which is possible.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of places you can go and explore with that.
But yeah, you're right. It is definitely the first katana Jedi lightsaber. Or katana lightsaber, I guess.
Which is actually kind of surprising since you look at how much of a samurai influence was like over the original films, with especially characters like Vader.
It's true, but really all the technology they had back when they first made the movies was just a pointed blade.
Yeah, just a light stick essentially.
So obviously with cartoon, but nowadays they could probably make a real Darksaber in the movies too, but with the technology, I would think.
So. As real as CGI is.
Yeah. Right, exactly, right? We're talking like the real. But,
I know, they probably could make a real one. No.
Well, that, or I mean, even with like terms of like prop replicas and stuff, you want like, there's a company that makes like those little like lightsabers you can actually kind of fight with.
Yeah, the
like,
LED ones.
Yeah, those are actually pretty cool, and they have like a different design, so like you can change like that, like
handles.
Out.
Yeah.
Like it. Like, if it wasn't for the cost of them, part of me really would consider actually getting a couple pair.
I know, they're pretty cool, but they're really expensive.
Oh, yeah. It's like, what, like 200 lightsaber?
Oh, yeah. It's expensive.
Yeah, the real effects. Yeah.
Yeah, those are so cool, though.
But yeah, it definitely leaves me wanting to know more about this Tar Vizsla, though. I mean, just...
Yeah, it's one of those
there's a whole background there, story there.
Oh, definitely, man. Like, if you actually had just, like, an episode that went back into the backstory of it, like, that would be pretty cool, because... If we go back to Clone Wars, like we have had a couple episodes that went into either backstory or into mythology pretty heavily, and were actually some of the highlights for Clone Wars.
I think it would be pretty cool because there's that petition going around to have Netflix pick up Knights of the Old Republic and turn it into a series. So that would be pretty cool to see this story kind of make its way.
Yeah, like actually have that be like a character that takes part in that universe.
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably kind of redo the storylines for like a Knights of the Old Republic sort of thing, or like go for like old school Jedi storyline. Yeah, I mean, and they've had done really well with some of the Marvel shows, so it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. So the other big thing in the beginning is Raul basically reveals that because this Darksaber is a symbol or a scepter, if you will, that if Sabine were to wield it, she could possibly reunite the clans of Mandalore underneath her and literally raise an army.
Because of who Sabine is on top of that?
On top of it, but also because it possesses the saber more than anything.
Yeah, well, to Brian's point, like, she is technically of the bloodline that would have claim to it, and if...
Possibly, we don't know yet.
Well, I think that's why he said that, was not simply because of the Darksaber, but because of the bloodline. Because her being part of the bloodline and having that...
Maybe. I mean,
it would give claim to to that.
If her mother ends up being Bo-Katan, yes, then yes, she would have legitimate claim. So I don't know though. We still don't know. We haven't seen her mother. That's the next episode apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So we'll finally find out. Or that could be, in the Star Wars universe, you never know whose parents are whose anyway. They could have been just the person that raised her. We won't really know, until they definitively say it.
From the Mandalorian point of view, that really might go either way with how they view that. Mm-hmm. Like, you could have just, like, you were raised by this person and thus you're accepted as that lineage.
It's possible, but they're such a warrior race, it would seem to me that they would be real big on bloodline, at least from a traditional perspective. But you're right, we don't know. Really.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would make sense in that regard, but you do have, like, very warrior races that do take opposite approaches to that, from our own history.
Yeah.
So, it could go either way.
Of course, exceptions can be made, too. Mm-hmm. So. But, obviously, getting back to the storyline, Sabine obviously didn't want the responsibility because she handed this thing over to Kanan in the first place. So, apparently, she's got her reservations.
Oh yeah, and it goes pretty heavily into it by the time we get towards the end of the episode. But
yeah.
I thought how they actually kind of intervened and asked her in regards to it was pretty interesting too. It's one of those things where Hera's like, "You don't have to do it," or I think it was Hera and Kanan. It's like, but we have to ask.
Well, I was going to bring that up next because to me it almost felt like an intervention to me. It's
very set up.
I even call it Sabine's intervention / decision, and that's the next scene that we're going to talk about. Because I felt like they almost forced her hand. It was really...
Well, they did.
There was a lot of pressure put on her.
Well, because what they said basically was, you're our chance to have an army behind us.
Right.
We really need you to do this. And then it was like, however, it's your call if you want to. We won't push you to it, but it could really help us out.
Yeah, it was like the last second. Well, here's all these reasons why you should. And at the end, Kanan's like, well, we're back either way.
Yeah.
It reminds me of our trips to Kings Island. You have a van, Brian. You don't have to drive, but it would really help us out. We could all drive together in one vehicle.
Yeah, you did become the driver quite a bit to Kings Island.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. So let's talk about the whole intervention scene. So the scene opens up, which I thought was kind of cool. You see her little spray painting of her, Rebels family.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of them from the Ghost, her Ghost family. Then you just kind of see her sitting underneath it, and she's real bummed out. And,
just kind of...
Yeah. You could
kind of in a melancholy.
Because she knows what's coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, of course, they would. Because they're a small rebellion that's looking to gain power to fight an empire. It's really... You kind of have to try to take any chance you have. And so far, up to this point, they have.
Yeah, and it really is a nice contrast, too, because it shows her surrogate family, and then, obviously, she's dealing with problems with her real family. So it's kind of that nice visual thing. So, after everybody's heard, obviously, the Darksaber, but about Fenn brings all that up again. And she says, but the Darksaber's caused me nothing but pain. Basically, and that goes back to Maul taking it back in the Clone Wars. Again, here we are again, more Clone Wars references, where, he basically killed Pre Vizsla, who was the last owner of it, the Mando owner of it, who was the leader of this Death Watch, which was...
Yeah, and pretty much uses that as a symbol for him to be in control of the Mandalorians.
Yeah, and uses it against him.
So, I mean, that could suggest that even without, having any form of bloodline towards it, it is a symbol of power.
Symbol of power, correct.
Yeah.
So whoever challenges and wins,
So, I mean, it could be a thing that once she's known to have a sword... Others Mandalorians will challenge her for it.
More than likely, I'd say that's 100%.
But if she proves herself to be more dominant, then it's essentially... It kind of goes into kind of an animalistic alpha rule sort of thing.
Right, which
the beta challenged the alpha, the beta lost, the beta backs down sort of thing.
Well, in this case, the beta dies, but yeah. So,
possibly.
But, so, and then, obviously, Fenn knows this, and he uses that against Sabine even and goes, well, you could use the saber to reunite the clans, undo Maul's damage, essentially.
It's a fair point.
Well, you know what? As I'm watching this, I'm almost wondering if he's doing this on purpose so that when she goes to reunite the clans, he's going to go, I challenge you, and then he's going to take it, and they're going to see that battle of him taking the Darksaber, meaning he's the most powerful, as opposed to just finding the relic and taking it to use it.
Actually showing, authority and a display of power rather than just being I found a trinket.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's possible. Hey, wouldn't say it's out of his character
because he is a Mandalorian.
Right. I think it'll be more likely be the other guy at first anyway. The what's his name?
The one they escaped from.
Yeah. Saul, not Saul.
Yeah, he's the Empire's Mandalorian.
Yeah. Anyway,
I know who you're talking about.
That guy, but yeah,
the name escapes me.
Yeah, something Saul Grawl. I don't know.
Yeah.
Saul Grawl.
Saul Grawl. Yeah, that's it. No, just kidding.
It's a good addition. He'll be a third generation Mandalorian down the line.
And then Kanan goes even further, though. He goes, well, I don't think it's any coincidence that you found the saber right now.
Goes for a very, this is destiny approach.
This is the will of the Force, almost.
Yeah.
He kind of has that. Like,
it's in his nature to bring up that sort of point.
Yeah, right, exactly. It is in his nature, yes, but it's kind of like
it's in character.
Well, here's the spiritual part. It's obviously destinies are colliding. And,
it's a fun way of just forcing your opinion at the same time.
Well, that's what he's doing.
Clearly, you were destined for this.
But that's exactly what he's doing.
Even if you don't want it, it's there.
And then Ezra chimes up and he's just a smart ass. He's like, well, you might have a hard time wielding that, but of course I use the Force, so obviously you're not going to be as good as me.
Well, it's a character that, once again, to his character's nature, is arrogant, and has been an issue that he dealt with.
Well, he's kind of rubbing it into her ego big time because and that comes out in this episode a lot though too, really.
Yeah.
So, which is somewhat of a thing of discussion for later, whether maybe she's using the dark side. Maybe we'll get about that later, though. And then there again, like we were saying, the thing that kind of shocked me and took me back most was Hera, because Hera's just blunt about it. She's like, "Yeah, we could really use those guys if we're on the attack of Lothal. That would be great. Yeah. that would really help our cause.
Really, Office Space middle management is what you're saying."
I was just like, I mean, she was just so blunt about it. She's like, yeah, that would really help our cause,
Well, I mean, it's kind of the obvious elephant in the room, though, isn't it?
It is, but even Sabine goes, but Hera, kind of shocked.
Well, it's funny because Hera's character went from, we're a group of rebels, blah blah blah, to captain, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's making that transition. So now, like, some of her decisions especially when she talks, you can tell are strategic, military-esque type.
Because now that she's transitioned, that she kind of has to play both roles and try to balance those out.
Yeah,
but it's funny that she talks that way to Sabine because Sabine's looking at her as she's part of the family, and like all of a sudden,
mom and dad are saying I need to do this.
Yeah, neither one of them are being like, coddling her anymore or anything. They're just like, well, you need to do this because it's going to help us.
Right.
Like, wait, what? A second, what?
It's like you need to take on the job and help out the family finances.
At the same time, though, it's not like Sabine hasn't been working towards the same goal as them.
But she's
on some level, she realizes they're right in that regard.
She knows deep down inside. I mean,
that's why you see that kind of brooding thing going on beforehand, is because realistically, that she knows that's what they're going to ask, and realistically, she knows what they're asking is a fair thing to request for the position.
It's a fair thing to ask, but I think it's an awful lot to ask.
Oh, super a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something you see a lot in the Star Wars universe.
It's true, yeah. I mean, she's gone... It's kind of funny. I've always thought this series is told from Ezra's perspective, and it still is, but she's almost becoming like the new Ahsoka. Ahsoka started out, everybody hated her. And then by the end of the series, everybody loved her.
I don't know. I think Sabine was an interesting character from the get-go.
Well, Sabine, not a lot of people liked her, though, at first. And now, all of a sudden, they're going more and more in depth with her, and there's a lot more history.
Well, they're doing all the Mandalorian backlore. That's what's happening. Yeah. And they're like, ooh, this is pretty cool. Whereas, I know what you're talking about, because when you first came out, they're like, a girl Boba Fett? Why would we want a girl Boba Fett? Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so she sprays, paints things, and blows things up. Okay, big deal. That's kind of the...
Really, I just thought it was interesting, sort of characters. Just you had the graffiti artist, you had that small, teenage rebellion in that regard.
I appreciate her for what she was at the beginning, but I wasn't really invested into her like I'm becoming. I mean,
because we were all brought up with the Jedi,
right?
Not the Mandalorians.
No, he was just a cool figure you bought and played with in the backyard. But so.
Oh, as a weird side note, did you guys notice the little tiny stormtrooper helmets and the wall in the background for this scene?
No, I didn't see them. Are they all spray painted and stuff, probably?
I don't know if they're spray painted, but there's just these little tiny, like, stormtrooper, almost looks like just stickers up on the wall, like, behind them at
I can see
parts.
her doing that, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I hadn't noticed it before the episode. Like, I don't know if that was there in previous episodes, but you just see him, like, a little spot, and you're like, oh, shit.
That the owls.
The owls, yes, we'll get to that.
The owls you
yes,
see everywhere.
They came up out of during the fight. Yeah, during the fight. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Very good point, though, Mr.
Yeah,
Bauer.
and that's also the thing she wears on, like, her shoulder, and it becomes almost like a crest sort of thing.
Almost, yeah. And I think that's all foreshadowing. We'll find out, though. But yeah, Kanan. So, and again, at the end, obviously she gives in, and then that's when Kanan drops his line again. Oh, well, you don't have to, but either way, we'll support you. But really, we really
now
want
that
you to
we kind of
do
forced you to do it, and you agree with us, you know you didn't have to do this.
And then as she takes it, he holds onto it. He goes, "You're gonna need to learn how to do this because you're gonna be challenged for it."
It's just adding more shit to it.
More shit to it on top of it.
It's like, so once they know you have this, they're going to want it and will probably kill you for it.
And so basically, he has to train her.
Yeah.
And then Ezra drops the Yoda line. Kind of, he's like, "Oh, there's no try, there's only doing."
Yeah.
Line on her.
Yeah.
At the end.
Just kind of a smart ass.
It's being a smart ass kind of way.
Yeah, because she said, "I'll try."
Yeah, I'll try. It's like, yeah, first lesson, there is no try. Only doing. Do or do not, there is no try. So, okay, so let's move on to Sabine's training. They take her out in the middle of nowhere. No distractions.
Well, it's kind of out to where... Actually, even Kanan's kind of been... Yeah, near the Bendu, like where
Bendu shows up. Yeah, it's actually exactly where the Bendu is, the same arena.
Yeah, like it's where he's kind of been going out to kind of train himself with Bendu, essentially.
Yeah,
so, much. Like, there's kind of an understandable reason he goes out there, because, like, clearly there's a spiritual thing for him there.
Well, or it could be strong with the Force. They've thought about exploring that. I've heard with Episode 8, they call them Force nexuses, where certain areas are stronger, or with one side of the Force or the other.
I mean, I guess I could kind of see it, especially if you go back to Clone Wars, where once again we do have a few episodes that go very heavy into the mythology. Like, you could see where that could be an extension. Yeah,
like the cave on Dagobah is a source for the dark side. It's a nexus place for it. But I'm going all nerdy for a second, but
no. I mean, it makes sense. It's just I'm not sure how you would implement that, and like if there could be weird things like midichlorian thing where like it kind of throws off some parts of the mythos.
There's no longer midichlorian. We don't talk about. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, you're right.
It's it's an addition to it, but it might also throw wrenches into parts of it if it's not done well.
True. All right. So Kanan decides he's going to test her with the training sabers, which are really just sticks.
Yeah, apparently him and Zeb whittled
some wood down into some good old fashioned sticks like we used to play with.
Realistically, where the hell did they find that? Because they're on a desert.
Well, it was probably made way back when he was training Ezra.
It was. They said that. Yeah. They said the sticks you tried to use with Ezra.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I don't remember that at all.
That's because they're not using them.
Yeah.
But Kanan doesn't call them sticks. They're training sabers.
Training sabers.
In quotations.
Makes it sound more professional.
Right. So he tests her. She goes up against him. He makes pretty short work of her.
Yeah.
And then he kind of slaps her in the face. One other point about that is when he makes her fall, even Ezra goes, "Oh, man." Like, ooh.
Yeah. I'm not expecting you to go down that quickly.
He's like, "Oh." It was pretty funny, I thought. Yeah. But he won't give her another shot with him. Instead, he gives him to Ezra, and Ezra starts training her on forms and stuff like that. Which I think is a slap in the face to her. Is her ego.
It could come across that way, but at the same time, from like Ezra's point, that's actually not quite taking on its own personal apprentice, but it is kind of training a younger Jedi sort of
in a
system.
way.
Like that is kind of like him moving up in the kind of ranking order and such.
In such a way, yeah.
I mean, because that's almost expected that for any Jedi to kind of train an apprentice at some point, like kind of learning, those skill sets is kind of a good step for him, actually. And kind of teaching and learning at the same time.
And I think it's, and I think part of it is Kanan has to learn how to train somebody blind. Last time he trained somebody...
When are we going to get over this? He's not blind. I mean, like, they might draw him that way on the show, but there's no... The way he moves and interacts with everything now.
I know, we've had this discussion in multiple shows, but...
What, that he just sees in different ways now.
Right, but still.
More the Matrix way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Season
think...
ones and zeros.
But yeah, Matrix.
Possibly. I don't know, man.
If that's how the Force works, I don't know.
Either that or they're going with the like Netflix Daredevil version where like everything's just on fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think she was kind of insulted by...
Oh yeah,
Ezra.
probably came across that way.
Yeah.
It does seem like the downside of the Mandalorian, as well as an upside, is the high level of pride and ego.
Pride and ego, yeah. Twice the pride, double the fall, right? But yeah, so a few days even go by, and Sabine is still just training with the stick and still with the forms with Ezra.
Yeah, just kind of the basic training, just here's the stances, here's the form. But the thing I thought weird about that is, like, aren't there actually, like, multiple sword styles within, like, the Jedi school system?
There
like,
are,
and it even references, like, in the Clone Wars film, right?
Yeah, there's all kinds of styles. In fact, I can't remember the one that Mace Windu does, but it's actually very close to the dark side, his form, because he actually draws on the dark side for his powers, believe it or not. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah.
That's why he becomes Snoke.
Possibly. I'd be okay with it. I mean, you can kind of go wherever with it.
So,
personally, I'm alright with Darth Jar Jar theory if we're going that far, but...
So after a few days, Kanan gets the call from Hera. Darth Jar Jar. Yeah, I'm completely ignoring you, by the way. First call from Hera comes in, and even Kanan's like, yeah, it's going really slow.
Yeah.
She's
we kind of need those soldiers, so speed this up.
Yeah, it's kind of right. But, you know, he's like, she's too close-minded. She's just too Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, it's weird that Hera seems, on one level, like she's trying to, like, speed things up and push things, and also at the same time being kind of more sensitive to, like, how Sabine actually feels about the situation, like her perspective.
The motherly instinct kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. She's kind of almost like a wife guiding Kanan through the training because he's so frustrated with her. Like a father would be trying to teach his daughter how to drive or something, you know, because usually the dads are a little tougher on their kids, right? Right. But he's also a Jedi, and he's trying to train her in the Jedi way, and she's not a Jedi, technically.
Well, that, I mean, I think Ezra makes this point later on, but there is the time constraint here that really makes a lot more pressure, that puts a lot more... What could have been done in a couple years... It has to be done in pretty much a Yoda's weekend session.
Right.
Right. No, that's a good point. Definitely. But yeah, and then I kind of like how he closes off his call with Hera. She's like, "Oh, I'm sending supplies," and he's like, "Yeah, send patience and understanding."
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a sarcastic sort of thing, but it works.
I thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah, it's a funny little bit.
So Raul arrives and. This is where we see those three, I think they're called converes or something like that. But those are essentially the space owls. And three of them, not one, not two, but three are sitting on the rock edge.
Well, normally we only see one at a time, right?
Usually, yeah. We saw a couple on the Bendu. We saw two.
Oh, okay.
We saw the white one and we saw a one with a little bit of brown on it. I would say, I guess it would be a male one. This time,
Spotted.
This one, they're kind of far away, so they don't get real close up, but there are three of them sitting on the ledge watching the whole battle, which is interesting because, you know, okay, you got maybe one showed up to watch Kanan, maybe another one showed up to watch...
Maybe they're that planet's equivalent of vultures. Maybe they're just like, oh, look, they're fighting. One of them will die and we'll have something to eat.
Maybe, I don't think so, but... Because they're represented.
Well, owls are predatory birds.
Well, we're pretty sure they're tied to the Force.
Okay.
So at this point,
it does have that symbolism attached.
Right.
To it,
so one's there for Kanan, one's there for Ezra. Who's the third one for? It begs the question. So
right.
There are three.
So she's a Jedi?
Is she Force sensitive?
Hints at it. Especially with the Bendu kind of glancing over at her at one point, it does kind of hint at it.
We'll get to that in the next scene. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But at the same time, though, if she was Force sensitive, wouldn't that pop up sooner?
It kind of comes out.
Don't most Jedis kind of pick up on the fact of Force sensitive kids and such? Because, I mean, you had, like, in the Clone Wars, an entire episode where you just have, like, kids of just Force sensitives.
Well, she's pretty good at hiding things. She even hides all her pain from Kanan, and Kanan doesn't even realize it until Hera points it out to him. He's kind of oblivious to it, which happens later, so...
At the same time, though, like, if you're able to, like, cloak being a Jedi, like, that seems like a pretty useful skill, right?
Well, when you watch her move, and we've talked about this in past episodes, when she does all that jumping around... It
looks very close to
very,
like a
very
Force
Jedi-esque. It's not something I would expect a Mandalorian to do, even the most highly trained Mandalorian, because it's very finesse.
She's very agile.
Yeah, agile. It's just there's
so you
a
think
lot.
like she's just slowly tapping into it for like certain maneuvers.
Or yeah, she just doesn't realize it. I
just think she's never had to use it.
Right, exactly. So, but yeah, so there's three elves. And as soon as Rao gets there, Sabine is, doing a spar session with Ezra. And, Ezra takes her down, essentially, despite Kanan trying to tell her how to fight. She's ignoring Kanan all
but I
the
mean,
time.
it takes a while for that sort of thing to go in, especially with the pride factor.
But, yeah, with her pride and everything, it's definitely an extra factor. And she's completely not listening to him at this point. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about her constantly not listening? You would think after a couple of days she might actually take some of his advice.
Well, I think it's... If we're taking this from like a Zen Buddhist sort of perspective, the longer the ego is, the harder it is to break. Like, you almost have to break that down to like a bottom level and kind of build up in some way. Like there's an argument that like those sort of like philosophical religions like that don't work as well in the West because of how much we build up our egos in that society.
Okay.
That source of individualism is just much more there, and thus it makes those harder in those civilizations. Which might also mean that Jedi training is much harder with Mandalorians for that similar sort of contrast.
Well, I think she's having a hard time because of what she's holding back.
Yeah.
What she's holding in, and the reasons why she left, which we go into later.
Because she's reluctant.
And she doesn't want it. She's not going that route because of what happened last time she tried to go out on a limb and help out and everything else.
Right.
Oh, yeah, she's definitely carrying a lot of baggage from everything else, and that's definitely kind of making her reluctant.
Yeah, it's weighing on her mind, so she's not open to the Force fully because she has that extra baggage there.
Right. That's true. Good points, gentlemen. So Rao shows up, and he gives her some Mando gear, which is meant to counteract Jedi. So all of a sudden, she has some extra... Cheating, cheats essentially.
Well,
and that's kind of where I got. That's kind of where I got with the. He is kind of pushing her one way.
Yeah.
And like, oh, well, you can do this, and here's an easy way around that. Go ahead and use this.
At the same time, though, like if you are fighting a Jedi that has Force abilities, and you don't, it is somewhat useful to have somewhat of a counterbalance. So I understand why those gear exist, why you would use it in that scenario. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I was amazed when like she did the one little shock thing that Ezra didn't just respond with like a force push. It's like, oh, okay, I can totally do that.
Yeah, but he was he was taken back by it. He wasn't expecting it. But yeah, it was like a electronic version of the force push.
Yeah, kind of.
Or a pulsar beam or something she uses on him.
It was like a sonic wave, wasn't it?
Yeah, like almost. It was something along those lines.
Yeah, it was like a sonic wave.
And it pushes him back.
And then she uses Wonder Woman's lasso later.
Right, which is different. I've never seen that before.
That was weird.
It's kind of neat.
That was fun. It seems like just like a grappling hook sort of thing.
It's almost like a whip.
That's what I'm saying. It was like the Wonder Woman
lasso.
We've seen like whips like in the Star Wars universe though that were like actual like electrified
we've
like things.
We've seen them in the books, but we've never seen them in like the movies or the TV shows.
Really, I could have swore it popped up in one of the TV shows once.
If it did, it must have been Clone Wars, but I don't remember it.
If you listen in the background, you can hear Wonder Woman's theme. You're
not looking forward to Wonder Woman anymore?
I wasn't before.
All right, so she uses it. She takes him down, pisses off Kanan. He was like, is this a game to you? Because she uses the lasso on him, wraps him up in it. He takes out his lightsaber. Is like, is this a game to you? And just basically whoops her ass, essentially.
And is irate about it. Like, really is just... Right. You can see, like, the anger coming out of him.
Yeah, it was like a enough is enough.
Yeah. It's like
I'm trying to get through to you. I am trying to help you here. Stop being a fucking asshole about it.
Well, then she's like, well, I'm just outsmarting my opponent.
Yeah, and I think this is the part where you actually get to the reintroduction of the Mando War being like part of the.
Yep, and that's what after he beats her ass, he goes, history lesson: the Jedi won that war. And the fact that he brings it back up is a big point because, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, Knights of the Old Republic is technically Legends. So again, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So again, now that it's being mentioned in Rebels, at some point,
it allows for you to go back and it's in the canon. It can be
right. They're reintroducing. Now, to what extent we don't know. Is it just a byline? It's just a byline at the moment.
Well,
in its show, but
you could do different things with it. I mean, essentially, you don't have if it's the former Knights of the Old Republic games are just kind of legends at this point. Even though we have seen like little bits of it pop up here and there, you could either go back and do like an actual TV show like we're doing with Rebels, or you could have it for one of Disney's standalones, or actually even an alternative to the main trilogy set, if we're being honest.
Well, because it according to the legends, it's like a 20-year war that goes on between the Jedi and the Mando. So,
yeah. But I mean, if we're doing that like as a film, like that would be a pretty badass film, I think.
Well, I would rather see it as a Netflix series that
just
goes
because it allows you to
5 seasons long, and I've got a 13-hour movie for five.
Oh, that's a fair point.
You know what I mean?
Like you go full like Band of Brothers on it.
Yeah, that'd be freaking sweet, dude. I mean, just watching Jedi take on Mandalorians all the sign me up. I don't even need a plot or a story. I'll just sit there and watch that crap all day.
Don't get me wrong. I would like a plot and a story. I got to be honest. Like, don't get me wrong. I am all for cool action scenes, but I dig the drama. I dig storylines.
But and it's also it's linked. That whole storyline is actually linked to a very famous Legends character called Revan, who was both Sith and Jedi. Kind of goes back and forth between. So
he's a gray Jedi?
Yeah.
It depends on how you define it.
Depends on how you look at it. But yeah, he's very popular in the Legends field, so they may be using it also as a way to reintroduce Revan, who's very popular.
Well, I don't know. Like, would you count a character who kind of jumps back and forth as being the same as a gray Jedi who kind of tries to find balance in the center?
No, because he literally bounces back and forth. Yeah. I mean, there's no... maybe at the end there's some gray at the end.
Like it takes him a while to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean he's literally he kind of loses his memory after being a Sith, and they kind of reprogram him to be a Jedi again and that kind of thing.
Wait, they reprogram him to be a Jedi.
Well, is this all part of like actual stuff now?
This is Legends technically.
Legends.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah,
the fact
this is crazy.
But the fact that it opens up the link back to that storyline because
it means it's a character you can reintroduce.
They can reintroduce it later, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, they always said that they could pick and choose what they wanted.
Right, exactly. And they could actually make it better, maybe even. I mean, not that there's a lot of like EU fans out there yelling at me right now, but still. So yeah, it's worth mentioning. So.
Well, I mean, we'll have to see how they reintroduce like some of the old legend stuff into this, because like we've seen Thrawn, but we don't really see like where his story arc's going in terms of.
Not yet. I got a feeling next 7 episodes, I'm hoping we finally get.
Like I gotta be honest, I think there'd be a lot of fans where like if Thrawn gets killed off like within like the first season he's introduced on like Rebels, would be really pissed off.
I really don't see it because they've got that we've talked about in the past. They've got the Thrawn novel coming out in April.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, I...
Do you think that's part of the reason why you have... or that could be part of the reason we actually had Rebels delayed, is that book is coming out and that you want that to maybe line up?
Yeah, it's very highly possible.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion. And like I said, we also have Star Wars Celebration in April as well, so which usually has some sort of preview for Rebels next season on it. So they may be lining it up like at that.
Where it might end like as soon.
They might give you a cliffhanger, and they might show at Celebration. They'll show the resolution to that. But anyway, so it just a little sidetrack there on the whole Jedi Mando War. So, but getting back to the whole story, after she uses these tricks, he goes, these tricks only work once in a while. Only training and discipline is going to save you.
Which is a very kind of stoic Jedi response in that regard.
Very much so. Kind of throws it in her face, then she throws it back at him and goes, well, the only thing I've learned is is Ezra must be very gifted to have learned so much from a lousy teacher like you.
And you just have Ezra
Stomps
standing there, just be like, I don't know how to take that. Is that an insult or a compliment?
And then, so she stomps off mad, and as a typical boyfriend would chase after his girlfriend.
You're really pushing that still, aren't you?
Yeah, kind of am. Ezra goes after her, has a little heart-to-heart. He goes, he's like, Kanan means well, but, and then Sabine's like, well, I can fight and I know how to fight, and blah, blah, blah. And
then Kanan's like, I don't think you're better than Ezra.
And there it is. And then she goes into, she starts to open up about her family. I'll just ever so bit, she goes, my family won't understand. I'm a traitor. I'm an outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And
how am I supposed to lead them? How am I supposed to go back to that?
Right, exactly. So we're starting to get the story out of her from her own words, from her own point of view.
Right. She's got that. It's right there. She wants to put it out there so everybody knows, but still hesitant and holding it back.
Very much so. And Ezra kind of throws it back in her face as he walks away from her. He's like, at least you got parents to go back to.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I understand that really fits with, kind of the story arc for Ezra, and the fact that, his parents, might be alive and then were dead was, kind of a big thing for Season 2.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels almost like a trope to sort of, throw that back out, that line out there, doesn't it? It's kind of it's been heavily used, before.
Well, yeah, and maybe another series, not so much...
Well, I think
maybe a little bit with Luke, I guess. But
I think this is more so the thing of... get over it, suck it up kind of thing. At least you have parents to go back to.
You're lucky enough.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's more of a, it's not as bad as it could be, suck it up.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there are certain instances where having certain parents to go back to isn't always better than having none.
Well,
and you don't really know her family dynamic.
It is when this episode is heavily on the family.
Yeah.
Whether it's her, like we said, the surrogate family, or
right.
So
the scene ends with her kicking a rock, which just happens to be the Bendu, who just kind of, after she walks away, kind of turns around, raises up, turns around, and gives her a really hard stare, like he sensed something from her, sensed her anger almost.
Well,
he felt
her
it,
foot,
or her foot, but I don't think it's. I think it's more than that.
You would assume so. How they had it, it was one of those shots that really suggests that it's implying something, hinting at something in the future, giving away more than it should. But at the same time, you look at Rebels and Clone Wars, there have been a few times where they have a few of those that don't necessarily lead up, and they're kind of meant as kind of
it could
distracting
be
away
it could
from
be a red
things.
It could be a red herring. It's possible, but. To me, it just because he's so synonymous with the Force and only appearing to Jedi so far, just makes me wonder that much more. It's just another
it
visual
hints at
clue.
It pretty heavily.
Yeah, so
and that'd be kind of an interesting transition, actually, and it'd be interesting to see where it goes. Actually, this whole episode has kind of a good transition for Sabine.
Definitely does. So we get Hera's second call, and this time it's an actual hologram of her. She kind of brings up to Kanan because Kanan's still frustrated, still pissed off, basically.
In fact, more pissed off than he was during the first call.
Right. And she goes, well, training Ezra wasn't easy. And he goes, well, at least Ezra was willing. I was holding back. And he's kind of making the whole thing about himself,
he's drawing comparison in some ways.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Brian?
Well, that seems the way that it's it worked the first time that way. Why is it not working this way the second time? I'm doing the exact same thing that I've gotten Ezra to this point, and he's like, well, Ezra wanted to learn.
Right.
It's why is she holding back? And that's when we start getting into that whole, you aren't better than your father.
Right.
And she starts fighting with the anger. Which is really weird. Why would you force her to start using anger when she's fighting?
He's trying to get her to open up, and he's...
I get that, but the way she starts is the whole way Anakin turned.
Yeah, very much
using the anger as the part of the way to get the power, and then she kind of, as she gets all of it out...
Then she steps back.
And she's like... It just kind of creates a cathartic moment of just releasing all that years of just holding that back.
We haven't gotten to it yet, but it's very reminiscent of Luke against Vader in Jedi at the final battle. Vader finally pisses Luke off to the breaking point, and Luke just lets loose with everything he's got, chops off his hand, and then takes a step back and looks at his own robotic hand and throws his lightsaber to the side. It's kind of that same. It was very reminiscent to me of that. It's kind of that same scene, but I digress. Let's get back to Hera's call because there's some good points to talk about here. And then, so again, she says, Ezra was willing to train. I was the one holding back. Is what Kanan says, and then, but Hera counterpoints to him and says, well, not allowing her to train with the Darksaber is really only fueling her rage. You're not allowing her to commit to it, to own it.
Well, then it could be a situation where it doesn't feel as real as it should when she's actually embracing what the actual symbol of it is.
Right, and really...
not adjusting to, like...
Well, that's why she thinks it's a game. It's because it doesn't matter what I'm doing. This is just a stick.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And... then and then Kanan throws it back to her. Well, her mind's out of balance. She's going to get hurt, and that's when Hera hits him up with she's already hurt.
Yeah,
her family has hurt her far more than any lightsaber's ever going to. And Kanan's like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, she doesn't want you to see it, but she's been hurt by her family, and she's hiding it from you. But
yeah, you really kind of do see that sort of expression of like just something he was unaware of kind of brought to his attention. And I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier where like you actually see like that's where it transitions from like the first training session where he's actually wearing like the mask, and later on where it's removed and it actually allows him to be more expressive. And emotive. And,
you actually get to see his burned out eyes or whatever. But then he kind of counters her back and goes, well, how do you know that? And then she throws her family into it, and her family history, which
the show's gone into pretty
heavily
as well.
She goes, I know what it's like to have your family abandon you. Remember how long it took her to trust us. She keeps hitting
this episode really goes through a lot of like interpersonal relationships within the crew and their extended families, or like original families, I guess might even be more accurate.
And Hera just keeps hitting him. She goes, and just give her the saber and let her face her demons, essentially is what she says. And at the end, she hits him up with one final wife to husband slap and goes, it's not about you. Almost like when a father's mad at his child and the mother comes in to try to bring things back down to earth a little bit.
She's like, if you don't get this, you're not coming to bed.
I don't know. I just kind of took it as like, it's not about your training style. It's just she has to work through this bit.
Right.
And you need to be there to assist that.
Well, it's like I said, it's like a father and a teenage daughter almost, and you can get really pissed off at your daughter.
It's also the whole like he's not allowing her to fail.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole. You could teach somebody anything you want and keep showing them the right way to do it, but until they do it the wrong way, they're not going to know.
There's a lot of people that learn better through failure than they do through their successes, and learning to learn through failure is almost as big a part of it.
Yeah. And even, Ezra goes on later on in the scene, right before she comes back, and goes, I think she'll be fine in time, like we were talking about. And Rao kind of hits him back with a line and goes, well, that's, time is kind of a luxury
we don't have.
The galaxy doesn't have. And he's right. The Empire is growing. We're only a couple of years away from the Death Star, essentially, so things are dire straits.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much every day, is a chance for the Empire to find the rebellion and destroy them.
Yeah.
Like, you really don't have time for anything. Like, you have to kind of force everything to go as quickly as possible, and that sometimes means making sacrifices of quality.
Yep. So let's get to Sabine's return, the final scene of the whole thing. There's apologies between the two, or back and forth, and Kanan's actually, before she even shows up, he's kind of meditating in front of the sabers on the ground, the Darksaber's on the ground. He's kind of meditating in front of it. Yeah,
and in some ways seems like he's almost bracing himself for what's to come, because he knows he has to push her and to get past a lot of those kind of mental barriers.
Very samurai kind of sort of in a way. So he gives her the Darksaber, and Sabine's even like, well, maybe I need more training. No, he gives her the saber.
Pretty much, we don't have time for that. We've wasted a couple of days on this.
Right. and then she ignites the saber, and then Kanan actually starts to explain how lightsabers work, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, really. It's kind of cool, especially from like a more like hardcore fan point of view. It's interesting having that like kind of explained out.
Yeah, he explains, that energy flows through the crystal, through it, and it also, your thoughts and your energy also flow through the blade.
Which, honestly, even going through the entire Clone Wars saga, you don't have, like, that sort of explanation of it. And, like, the whole they actually attract thing, like, you can kind of see in, like, some of the visuals of it, of, like, the older stuff, but it's nothing you necessarily ever connect.
Yeah, and that the fact that you actually become part of the blade in a way, like, the Force through the Jedi actually flows through their lightsabers and back and forth again. I've never really heard it give that Yoda-esque kind of...
Yeah, like, and it really is kind of that interesting, the sword or lightsaber is an extension of yourself at that point.
Right, exactly.
And even during, like, a few minutes later on when they're actually in the midst of the training thing, you actually hear her say how it's gotten lighter and how it's...
Right, at first it's like, it's heavier than I thought. And then, she says...
As, like, the energy starts passing through and gets more used to it, like, it does lighten up for her.
Exactly. So, so they begin to... he also explains that, like we said, how they're attracted to each other, almost like in a scientific way, in a way. They're kind of drawn...
There's almost like an electromagnetic pull towards
it. Yeah, which I thought was cool, too. It's just kind of a neat part of...
Hope their Schwartz don't get tangled.
Yeah. Shit. I hate it when my Schwartz gets twisted. I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Let's see how well you handle it. All right. So they begin to spar.
If you put your leg here and I put my leg here.
Just... 1, 2, 3. Okay. No. So he begins to fight with her, and he starts with just the forms that she's been taught.
Just kind of going through the basic blocks.
Right. He's like, block high so she can feel how it feels. And then he tells her middle, then he tells her low.
Just kind of getting used to wielding it and like the sensation of it all.
And then he starts the whole thing. He's like real slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, even on slow, it's like a moderate pace.
Right.
Like, and then by the time you get to fast, it's like, oh shit, they're actually moving pretty good pace.
And as they're in the heat of battle, he keeps, I think
pushing her.
Yeah, he keeps saying,
"You should quit."
By the time he gets to that fast pace and she it's lightened up for her, like it really gets to that point where like he doesn't even use the lightsaber as heavily. Like he's really just physically pushing her.
I think even before they even start like the real fast stuff, he's like he says you're clinging to a heavy thought. He starts talking to her and starts poking the bear, and then as they start getting into it, and then after he knocks her down and she gets back up and he knocks her down.
This too easy
for the you're making this too easy for me. Just constantly poking her, constantly trying to get the truth out of her at the same time.
Yeah, and you see that even like in the physical interactions there, like you see where he's actually just grabbing her arm, throwing her, or like pushing her shoulder, and like actually clearly just antagonizing even on a physical level.
Yeah, I mean he's literally forcing it to the surface with her. Which, again, we said is, like we talked about earlier, is strange because he's forcing her to anger. He's forcing her to emotion.
It's forcing her to emotion, but it's removing a barrier that's actually allowing her to be at peace in a weird way.
At the end of the day, at the end game, it's just a very strange way to see a Jedi. I've never seen a Jedi do that.
Well, one of the reasons you probably don't is because most Jedis are trained as children. They shouldn't have those mental barriers that you need to break down like that.
Yeah.
But with Ezra and with Sabine both being trained at older ages where they do have years of baggage and things like that, it does kind of you do have to have sort of allowing the negative things to pass so they don't brood on them to the same extent.
I guess it's just even when I saw Yoda train Luke, it was never like that. I mean, he showed him how to use the Force when he moved his X-Wing out of the water. He took him in the cave and he had face the dark side visions and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, but
it was never embrace the anger.
Yeah, but one of the things you could also point to is if you look at the prequels with Anakin, the fact that Anakin was trained at a slightly older age than some other Jedis, the fact that he still had connections to his previous life, that when he lost things from his previous life, he never had a way of moving through it that wasn't just a fit of tantrum rage. And that was probably part of the reasons because he couldn't move through that or past that.
Well, you mean the loss of his mother and carrying that around? Possibly.
Because even if you look towards episode 3, that still seems to be part of his motivation to a certain
Well, that's
extent.
the whole motivation, because he doesn't want to lose Padme like he lost his mother.
Like, that's just baggage he carries around. Like, he could never get rid of it.
It's possible. It's just it's a very unorthodox way from what we've seen so far.
Well, yeah, but it's an unorthodox way for unorthodox
training. Okay, that's fair.
For unorthodox candidates.
Okay, that's fair. I'll go along with that. So again, and he finally, he goes, "You should quit," and she's like, "I never quit." And they go at it, and then she basically takes him down. I mean, in the height of her emotion, in the height.
It's also hard to say how much of that is him actually listening to the story and like not.
Maybe, but he's almost overpowered by her at one point. He's almost taken back by how much strength she's throwing at him.
Yeah, because she's really just putting her whole weight behind at that point.
He puts her up against... She surprises him and puts him up against that hillside. And then that's eventually where he falls down, eventually. But it's like she just hits him with everything she's got.
It's like all the emotion just pouring out, and like it's carrying along with the physical aspects of it.
Yeah.
Like, it really has kind of linked some of the physical and mental things in, like, the fight scene pretty well.
Yeah, because, I mean, she actually, not only does he fall down the hill, she jumps down after him, literally gets over top of him, and holds the sword over her head in a finishing blow, and then finally stops. Once she's gone through all this
after the rage is just released.
Where she tells her whole story where, I made these weapons, they use these weapons.
Yeah,
which
is
these
also
same weapons I made on my own people, on my own family, my friends.
Yeah, and just like the actual thing she's saying throughout the fight scene is like a fascinating part of backstory we never really knew the character.
Because we find out that she made these same weapons are used, and they use those same weapons to enslave the Mandalorian people and make them fearful. And this is a prideful warrior race of people.
Oh yeah, so like she pretty much felt that by continuing to serve the Empire, she was betraying her people and just carrying around the guilt of that.
Yeah.
And then when she actually tried to act right in her people's interest, was abandoned by them.
And they took the Empire's
so
side.
There's like a whole slew of just emotional aspects of that.
Right, which really not only does it deepen her character big time, but wow, I mean...
Oh yeah, like that's a messed up thing, like knowing that you were pretty much created like the bullets and the bombs that blew up like friends and family.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's got to be a bit of a mind fuck.
And then when you try to get everybody to follow you in a revolt, they don't follow you, which is just one more reason why she's probably doubtful that why carrying this blade is going to make any difference when she goes back.
Oh, definitely. Like, it's one of those things people learn from past experience, and the past experience for her was that in that scenario, they weren't going to follow her.
Right. And I mean, even Kanan's like, you ran, didn't you? And, even during their battle, and just to poke that out of her, she's like, no, I didn't run,
Well, it's interesting because at the same time, it's also the things when she does go back that are questions that are going to be thrown at her.
Yeah, because apparently everybody thinks she just ran away.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened.
So it not only is it kind of poking the bear, it is preparing her for the mental aspects of what's going forward.
Going to happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Though, an interesting note on the battle that we didn't really cover too much is that she actually does implement the little whip thing to actually recover her heavy saber.
Instead of using the Force, she uses her lasso, or whatever you want to call it.
And even you have, like, Ezra being kind of surprised by it. Like, you see, like, that integration of, like, the Mando techniques with the actual
Jedi technique that she's learning,
So, like, it's almost like she's learning how to kind of implement her own style into it.
Well, yeah, because she does that after
her own personality.
I think even Kanan tells her before she does it, she's like, you have to use everything. That and then that's when she uses it. So, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an interesting little thing that kind of popped up during the scene. It's like, oh, yeah, that really does allow for some different possibilities with it.
So, the whole episode ends with, Kanan, she has a breakdown. Kanan kind of consoles her. He's already on his knee. And she goes, why would anybody follow me? And then that's when Rao gets up and says, for what it's worth, I'll follow you.
Yeah.
And he gets down and kneels before her. And then Ezra does the same and says, I'll follow you too. And he goes, oh, no, I mean it.
I understand with Rao a little bit, like, because he is a Mandalorian. He understands the story of, like, why she did what she did.
Yeah.
And with Ezra, like, you're kind of like in the surrogate family situation, but it seems a bit more off and like a little weirder to me.
To me, it's the surrogate family support system. To me, that's what that is with Ezra.
What I thought was weird was the whole kneeling thing. Like it was like It's one thing to be like, I'll follow you, and like they give hugs, right? Because it's a family thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they did like the whole like kneel in front of her, like as if she was like the queen or something.
Well, she's going to be.
That is kind of the
she's
interesting
successful.
aspect of it. Is like if she does succeed and like they want her to, she more or less becomes the ruling.
She becomes a ruler Mandalore.
Yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily like a tribal leader position or
Well,
title for that.
there
but-
was Satine, which was Obi-Wan Kenobi's love interest. She was a duchess, and she was the Duchess of Mandalore. So
was that like the main ruler as a duchess?
yeah, at the time.
That seems a little weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But at the same time, like, I don't know what royal position Mandalorians have for, like, their high chief or whatever.
Well,
so.
they had, like, a royal family kind
Yeah.
of thing, but yeah, so.
So it is kind of a weird contrast because you are doing that in a very kind of knights following their leader sort of way, like in terms of kneeling, and
Right.
you are trying to put her in that position.
Well,
So
she's got to start thinking that way, yeah,
Yeah.
especially.
There is something about it, like, visually that does seem a little weird. But overall, it was very cool.
All right, well, real quick, before we get into final thoughts and grades, percentage on Sabine being at least force sensitive, 0 to 100%. Aaron?
I'd say 80 to 95.
80
Like, there's a pretty high chance of it.
Yeah. Brian, what do you think?
I was going to say the same thing. It's pretty high.
Pretty high, yeah. I'm going to say right now I'm at 90 to 95% sure she's force sensitive in some way,
Like, don't
shape,
get me wrong,
or
like, the
form.
fact that she was able to hide it for so long, like, is still impressive, and
Yeah.
it'd definitely be interesting on, like, how, since, like, Jedi essentially seem capable of sensing, like, other Jedi and Force sensitive.
Except for
wide
Rey.
areas.
Or you got Rey, and you also have Palpatine who hit it from Jedi in plain sight.
That's a fair point.
So
Yeah.
Palpatine just didn't use it.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He just he turned it off completely. Yeah.
Like, that's just, you just don't use it, you're good.
Well, that's how they explain it. It's legends now, but in the Darth Sidious book, that's how it's explained.
Okay, so when Force-sensitive kids are picked up, it's actually because they're tapping into it and actually demonstrating the ability.
Not necessarily. According to, if you go back to the Clone Wars episodes with the Force-sensitive children, they're it's like they're almost predetermined. There was like a list. There was a keeper of the list. Like through the Force, they saw these children, like future Jedi and whatnot.
Okay, but after that Jedi Order is destroyed, that's no longer there. So, how are the Sith and the Inquisitors tracking down Force?
I think they're still using old data from the Jedi Temple because
Okay.
using the Force, you can go probably so many years in the future.
Okay, fair enough.
So, I would think so.
All right.
Predestined, predetermined. All right, so we broke this thing down, and we are just now over an hour. So let's go into final thoughts and grades.
You know, honestly, for this episode, that's not bad.
No, not for this episode. I agree. But again, final thoughts and grades. All right, Aaron, your final thought and grade for this episode.
For this episode, I'd probably give it an A to A+. I mean, we've had so many episodes that were so slow and, like, maybe only had a scene that really added to the overall story arc. With this one, like, you have so much that adds to the backstory, that adds to the mythology, and actually progresses the main storyline so heavily. And, I mean, there's so many small details that are so interesting and add to, like, the actual, just everything. So, yeah, I'd give the show an A+.
Yeah, I'll give it an A+ as well. It's probably, if not, it's probably my favorite episode so far this season.
Yeah.
Next to maybe the one where they merge the holocrons is my next favorite. It's between those two. Everything in this episode, like you were saying, Aaron, is relevant. The only thing that's slow is when they're actually driving to the campsite. Other than that,
even that has kind of the symbology.
You're right of the journey. But everything else, I mean, it's just jam packed, full of. Right off the bat, you've got new Star Wars myth, new Star Wars lore. You've got you get to see a Jedi in training, kind of, sort of, but as a Mandalorian, and that different twist. There's heavy on family. Just wow. Just I wish every episode was like this. To be honest, wow.
Oh, especially after the last couple, yeah.
Yeah, it makes all the filler episodes we've had this season worth it, in my opinion, and even the ones that are pseudo filler. Or not as good episodes, but yeah. So yeah, A+ in my book. Brian?
Yeah, I'm gonna go A+. I mean, it's got two things that I love most: lightsabers and Mandalorians. So
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong.
All right, copy that. All right, so where can you find 4 Midwest Guys? That's real easy. Go to google.com, type in the number 4 Midwest Guys. You'll find our Podbean page where we host our podcast off of, as well as our YouTube account, Facebook, Twitter, all those different avenues. You can reach out to us through there, and make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to all of those. And we would like to hear from you as well, so reach out to us. All right, so... guys, it's been an excellent episode. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yep. Aaron, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
All right, and for B. Willie saying, may the Force be with you always.